It is here, and it's crazy. I mean, there was a point where it seemed like this day was just so far off.
I know. I can't believe we're finally here.
Mm-hmm. How many times have you seen it now?
4.
Okay.
With a planned showing this evening as well. How about you?
8.
8!
Yes.
Yes!
Yes, but it was very strategic. You know, I got very lucky. I got a couple extra ones in there. And so I'm very grateful to Universal Pictures for that. And I mean, I just feel like every time I see the movie afterward, I there's more I want to remember. And so I can't wait to see it again. And every time has been like the first time for me. Has it been that way for you too?
Yes, and I notice something new every single time that I watch it, and especially in the orchestrations. I just can't wait to get into it because there's so much here.
It's so true. So yes, getting right into it. I just, the embargo lifted on the 19th, and we're seeing great reviews come out. I love all the very, very positive reviews. And I was able to finally review it properly on air this morning, which went really well and was very fun. And I just, right off the bat, I feel like it is just the biggest Oz movie we've ever gotten. It certainly is, but it's the best Oz movie, the best movie, I would venture to say, certainly the best movie musical ever made. It raises the bar in so many ways for what is possible in cinematic storytelling, the way that they filmed it between, singing live with effects, building as much as they built, firing on all the senses in terms of what's capable for storytelling, through performance, through emotion, through visual, through effect, through practical and special, through visceral, emotional, everything but physical. You experience everything in this movie except for physical touch because we're not seeing it in 4D yet. I mean, it is available in some places in 4D.
Oh, I don't know about that because honestly, the people around me, we were all so, and every time I've seen it, this has been my experience. Everyone is so moved that you inevitably end up reaching out and grabbing the hand of the person next to you. So in that way, it is kind of physical. I mean, we had that happen to us when the
yes,
first.
we did a couple times. Yeah, we were holding hands. Yeah.
Oh, and it's just natural because you are so moved, and the person sitting next to you is having that similar emotional experience, and it is this kind of unifying thing when you're sitting in the audience and watching this happen and experiencing it this way. And it did something that is very difficult to do. It successfully adapted a stage musical to the screen. Not an easy task. That medium jump is a large leap.
It's so true. I mean, yeah, there's always a lot of different reactions to that sort of situation. We see complaints between, casting non-Broadway experienced performers in musical movie roles, and we see they cut a lot of songs to make an adaptation from stage to screen, and it's much to the peril of the film because it is a difficult transition. I mean, I'm sure that screenwriters struggle in adapting something from page to screen. How do you realize something, but you're not competing with something as visual? So here they really, it's just that the team of artists and designers and decorators and storytellers behind the camera that did all of those things so magically here. Really, that's why people are so dazzled. I think it's such an overwhelming film when you first see it.
100% agree. And those performances are so sincere from Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, the entire cast really, that it's like they're looking right at you. I mean, it's like they're speaking to you. And that, I think that, and the fact that everything is practically built, those are the things that really harken back to the 1939 film. The sincerity of performances, the fact that you know that they are fully immersed in the world of Oz, really makes a big difference.
It's so true. It's so true. I think that makes all the difference because unlike, we look back at Oz the Great and Powerful, where everything or way too much was CGI, and it's so much more noticeable now. It's also, looking at the Wizard of Oz, and it gives us a new lens, as is often the case, and thematically even here, looking at things another way. But it's the first time that I look at the Wizard of Oz and think now it looks dated and it looks old, and you notice the matte paintings, and maybe it's time, dare I say, that the Wizard of Oz could use a glow up. I've never before really advocated, although I would be there for it, a remake of the Wizard of Oz, but now I feel there's almost an argument for it, and that is Wicked.
I only wish John Chu would consider directing a new adaptation of the 1939 film as well, because I would certainly trust it in his hands.
Oh, 100%.
But I agree with you. I think every great film deserves a glow up, deserves a second look. And really, Wicked has provided a second look at the Land of Oz in this way for the first time in 85 years. And you and I have always disagreed about Oz the Great and Powerful. And I certainly respect your opinion. But yes, when you hold those two films up next to each other, there is no comparison.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. So just the best movie ever. I also, this is the first time ever in watching any kind of Oz entertainment where I walked out of it thinking like, holy cow, sweet Oz. We got a superhero. This is arguably like an origin story for a superhero,
Yes.
And I know that in some interviews, Cynthia and John talked about how they very specifically looked at some of the choreography and staging for Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman even, and used some of those moments in filming the Defying Gravity. And it's so impactful because the original score here, the musical underscore, not talking about the actual songs, but that combined with the power shots of Elphaba, when we're seeing the iconic things like the broom and the cave, and these aren't spoilers because they're all over the trailer. Some of these shots are actually in the trailer. And then, seeing her fly, it's like, that's where you all collectively as an audience get the chills, and you're like,
yes,
she is Superman. Elphaba is Superman.
And when you look at Cynthia Erivo in those behind the scenes videos, flipping upside down, being pulled across this soundstage on wires in her costume, in her corset, singing out loud. I mean, it is just mind blowing. Cynthia Erivo is the superhero, not Elphaba. I mean,
that's very true.
And the way that she and Ariana Grande, their genuine friendship reads on screen and through their characters. And I think it added immensely to the dynamic in the film. And I don't think this film would have been half as good with anyone else.
It's true. The chemistry there is key. And that also goes back to casting it the right way. We look at like The Wizard of Oz and how well cast that was. At one point, Buddy Ebsen was going to be the Tin Man. Then the inhaling of the tin powder, the aluminum powder, he had to drop out. We got Jack Haley. Sad for Buddy Ebsen, and thankful that he recovered from that medically. But one of those everything for a reason situations, because we cannot imagine anyone but Jack Haley having played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. I believe that the world and generations from now will continue to hold Wicked in the same regard, where you will not be able to, as great as Broadway is and the tour is at casting Wicked, and there are many fantastic Glindas, Galindas, and Elphabas, this is now immortalized for everyone and forevermore with Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, Ariana Grande as Glinda, and John Chu was equally born to make this movie.
Could not agree more with that. And, when we think back on all of the times it was almost adapted for film, all the times that it was in pre-production and then hit a snag and stopped, it really does feel like it was just meant to be in this moment, and was meant to be with John Chu and with this cast. And I'm so glad that it took all this time to get there so that we got the perfect combination, the perfect storm. And we will hear some complaints from folks who are unfamiliar with Wicked saying, oh, this is a setup movie, it doesn't resolve. But personally, since those of us who know what's coming next perhaps don't mind. But I do think that it is a full narrative arc on its own. I think it works as a standalone film as well as part one of a two-part series.
It really does. It's a completely fulfilling, completely satisfying film when it ends as it is. Like, if we didn't know that there was more to the story, if you hadn't seen the stage version or you hadn't read the book, you might be completely satisfied with this. I mean, also it does end with to be continued. And right away, even now, it's like we're very excited about this movie, but we're right back to the waiting now for part two, just like we've been waiting the last year for this movie. So that's a little bit torturous, but it's just so exquisite to look at. I remember the first time we saw it on October 2nd, I was just so overwhelmed. The film just sort of washes over you. But there's so much more added because of the medium of film that you don't get out of the stage show. So, when you see the musical on stage, it's really a sparse, dark stage. And there is costuming, lighting, select set pieces, and props. But that's it. And here in this fully realized universe, the amount of visual storying, not just in what we're seeing in design, but the spatial visual storytelling. For example, when you see a character move from this part of Oz to that part of Oz during a lyric from a song or something like that, it's a lot to comprehend and process all at once in the most delightful way.
And of course, there are things here, they fill in a lot of blanks that you don't get in the stage show, and they fill them with some stuff from Gregory Maguire's novels and some stuff from L. Frank Baum's books. There are so many Easter eggs in the movie that, when I went to see it with Rosa, for an example, last time, every time there was a musical hook from The Wizard of Oz, she went, oh, because, your ear just is so accustomed to those sounds, to those melodies. They just pop right out.
It's so true. It's so lovely. I just love seeing all of these locations, knowing that they built them all. And then when on the flip side is when we do have CGI and special effects, they're so well done that it won't receive the complaint that some people say where there's too much CGI. I mean, obviously, you're going to have CGI animals that are talking and some of the special effects and things, but like, it's not a special effect that Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba is flying. She was in a harness and she was singing live and she was doing that. And so the cape work might be some added effect, but it's all done so well. They worked with, let's face it, they had the budget to do it, thank Oz. And that money went to really good use because the effects are very well done. They're almost subtle looking. They're soft. The animals look very realistic. We talk about photorealism when we're talking about movies like the live action Lion King or the upcoming Mufasa and how real it looks. So it doesn't look like, just a cheesy, like those, baby talking movies where suddenly it's like a weird animated mouth. Everything here looks really natural and smooth. So they worked with outstanding, special effects artists.
And because of that, I hope it will stand the test of time like The Wizard of Oz has done. I think you're right, Dr. Dillamond, especially, he's basically, a supporting character in the movie. And I know they used a puppet on set and they had someone actually reading lines with the actors. So they were responding in real time to a performance that was happening. It does really add an air of legitimacy to their performances. And I really enjoyed the animal characters and how they integrated more of that story arc into Elphaba's past, because of course we now know that. Are we getting into spoiler territory? Is it time?
I think we could do a little. Yeah, let's do some spoilers.
So spoiler alert, plug your ears if you haven't seen it yet, if you're going tonight. So one of the things they've added to Elphaba's backstory is that she was raised by a bear nanny called Dulcie Bear, and she has a deeper appreciation for animals' rights because she has this really emotional connection to an animal that helped to raise her and who validated her. And I think that just adds so much to Elphaba's struggle with what ends up happening at the end.
Right. Well, it really explains a lot. And there's also a lot more. You see how mean Elphaba's father is to her, and how she takes that in and carries that with her, even in the face of caring for her sister. She never resents Nessarose because of it. And we see more between the sisters and their bond, and we see so much more with Glinda and Elphaba, even in their relationship, and the evolution of how they become friends, and especially where all the songs are expanded. There's a lot of breaking up the songs where you have more dialogue poking in, but it doesn't stagger the film. It doesn't seem stunted or stutter anything. It really just is all in the vein of really strong storytelling.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think they added so many layers, and Glinda's a harder sell. I think the Elphaba character is really well written in the musical book. I think Glinda's a little bit harder. A lot of what works on stage for Glinda is stuff that the actresses bring themselves. It's very individual. Every time you see Glinda, you're getting a different Glinda, really, truly a different Glinda. The elements of Elphaba are pretty consistent, but the elements of Glinda are really fluid based on who's playing her. Mm-hmm. Kristen Chenoweth's Glinda and Megan Hilty's Glinda don't even resemble each other. So, right. And on and on. So I think Ariana Grande had the larger challenge of finding the nuggets of truth in Glinda and figuring out what makes her tick and what makes her compelling as a character, because you could just play her as a mean girl, but that's not what Glinda is. She's much more complicated than that. She is a girl who really thinks she's a nice person, and who really believes that she is deserving of all of this popularity. And because of that, because we all know someone like this, that element of this person of color being discriminated against, and right out of the gate, Glinda saying, like, how did I come across? I was just trying to be nice. To me, that resonated so much deeper in this adaptation.
Definitely. And I think that's something that allowed for everybody saying, like, why are they breaking this movie into two parts? It doesn't need to be two parts. Right exactly there is just one example of why it makes sense to make it two parts. Also, another justification for two parts is adding the extra animals, giving Dr. Dillamond his community of animals, and changing the setting for something bad. So it's not just a duet between Elphaba and Dr. Dillamond, but it begins as him, like, filling in his friends, his animal coworkers and friends, about what's going on, again adding more context and seeing more and expanding the story in a way that it just makes so much more sense. We have to talk about the cameos.
You guys, the cameos! The audience in every screening I've been in has gone absolutely wild for all of the cameos. I think the two cameos everybody was holding their breath for were, of course, Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, who, yes, appear in One Short Day. They get their own brand new original musical sequence, and everybody in the theater was going wild.
Same. I've experienced that all 8 times as well. And what's really spectacular about it is I didn't get the chance to ask Winnie about this, or Stephen, who wrote these lyrics, but they are portraying the magical wise ones, and the ones who originally, wrote down the Grimoire and created it, because knowing that they were dying out and authentic magic in Oz was eventually going away. So, it explains why we think of Oz as a magical land. Really, it's not. Not everyone that's in Oz is magical. There are really interesting, queer, unique variants, variety of people and things that are animated and speak and feel. But there are only a few people who actually practice magic. And as we know, there are the famous 4 witches, 2 of which were consolidated into one, the North and South for MGM. But then there's East and West. Here we see the Wicked Witch of the West, aka Elphaba, comes by magic very authentically. Morrible, without a location specific, is a somewhat magical witch. We don't know who else anywhere in the land of Oz at this point in this film can actually naturally do magic. Morrible teaches sorcery, but what's interesting about Kristen and Idina's roles as the wise ones, if we look way back to canon and L. Frank Baum, he explains that in the time of Lurline, the magic came to Oz through 3 adepts at magic, which were 3 witches who infused the land of Oz with magic. And so while we only see 2 here, I think they represent the adepts of magic.
I think that you're right. And I think it was a really good decision just narratively as well, knowing what we know, knowing that they originated the magic in the musical. That is so powerful. and to see them interacting with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, the way that Idina Menzel straightens her hat, the way that Kristen Chenoweth, puts her hand over her mouth to stop her from belting out.
That's so funny.
Idina Menzel doing her battle cry.
Yes.
I mean,
and that's something we wouldn't. Yeah, there was no guarantee we were going to hear that, Tori. If you think about it, like they might think like, oh no, the battle cry is coming up. This isn't Defying Gravity. Don't do that. Defying Gravity. Don't do that now. But it takes nothing away from Cynthia Erivo. It takes nothing away from Defying Gravity. It really just gave Idina an authentic moment to bring in and drop a little bit of her alphaba into this film in a way that honors the audience, that honors her, that honors where this came from on stage. As far as the other cameos go, they're great. I love seeing Winnie and Steven, but it does break my heart a little bit. I really hoped that Gregory Maguire had made a cameo as well.
Yeah, let's talk about the cameos that were missing. I feel strongly that Gregory Maguire should have been included somewhere in part 1. Maybe we'll see him in part 2. Who knows? I think it was a shame that he wasn't in part 1. I think that we should have honored the source material in some way by, including him. There was also the gentleman who drives the train.
Yes.
To me, it looks like that character was meant to be where they would have plugged in Joel Grey.
Okay.
I mean, that's just based on how the character looks.
The mustache man?
Yeah, the mustache man. There's a little man with a mustache. Yeah. I feel like that would have been a perfect spot for Joel Grey. I know he's up there now, but I would have loved to see him included as well. But they did a fair job of including, some really important people and tipping the hat as well to a lot of important people. There were so many nuggets in there from L. Frank Baum during the introductions of the Shiz professors. You hear Madame Morrible, head of biological studies, mentioned, and Professor Mombi. And I was like, wow. And that almost feels like a nod to Return to Oz, not L. Frank Baum, because of course Mombi was not the one switching her heads in the books. But it really was lovely to hear that.
Yes.
And there's so many layers to this. And
yeah,
I think standing where we are right now in November of 2024, watching this movie really hit me in so many different ways than I think it would have a year ago. Seeing the revisionist history of covering up the animals with the wizard's head and having that revealed Shiz. They did not pull their political punches in terms of the messaging here.
Right. Yes. It's very, 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 very real. And that's part of what they retained from Gregory Maguire's book. For all that the musical and movie is a much more Disneyfied PG version of Maguire's book, his book is very deep and very also dark, but like it's very deep and thoughtful and has a lot of themes that touch upon relationship and political theory and evolution and power and control for society and world at large. So it's very, I love that they retained that, because that's a lot of meat on the bone.
And again, at the end, when Madame Morrible is making her proclamation, and it's Bach and Fiero who are kind of stopped going, what is going on here? Such delicious foreshadowing all throughout for part 2. And we won't go into spoilers for part 2. If you know, you know. But each of the characters, when they're introduced, you see their silhouettes of what they will become pretty much instantaneously. I love, and here we go, guys, another spoiler, but I love how the Fiero introduction has changed. He was so endearing right out of the gate, and the foundations of their relationship, which I think is not as strong in the musical.
Right.
That felt like it was built on much firmer ground.
It's true.
And did you see the face he made right after he introduces himself to her? Was very reminiscent of another performer who's played the role.
Yes, it is very much so, and it's so cute. And like, I also think it's hilarious the way he dismounts the horse. Like, no one's really talking about it. He shoots himself. Like, who can do that? How did he come up with that? It's hilarious.
That's the horse.
Right. That their first meeting is a meet cute. His first meeting with Galinda is a meet cute, and they're both hilarious in their own ways. We have to give credit here to Jonathan Bailey, who is so strong. His Fiero is so much funnier than the stage one. It's written that way, but he also delivers it with so much effervescence, and he is just so likable. It makes you wonder, is everyone in Oz bisexual, or is he just bringing it out in everyone? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
brought up the queerness of Oz, and we should touch on that because they do not shy away from that either in this film. Fiero's pansexual. He is flirting with literally everyone, and I'm
Right,
here
right.
for it. I love it.
Yeah, he's very Elvis. He's very Conrad Birdie, and you see shades of I like what is this feeling in the lunchroom scene looked like it could have been moments from Grease. I saw there were other moments that looked like they were like inspired by West Side Story. You saw moments that were inspired by Bye Bye Birdie. Like so many different classic musicals that you could see are films that I'm sure John M. Chu grew up with and was able to kind of, pay homage to in very subtle ways, but in brilliant ways, because the choreography here is so outstanding. We've got the costume designer who did Hamilton, and and Christopher Scott, did he also do the Hamilton
I'm not certain, but I know for sure.
choreography?
I know for sure Christopher Scott drew inspiration. He looked at the musical. He looked at the movement from the musical. He was very inspired by the lifts, by how everything felt just a little bit off. And they said that when they were choreographing the musical, like if you feel like you've done this before, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And
He did not choreograph Hamilton. I just checked, but
Okay.
but yeah, the way you were saying, the way he created the movement.
Yes, and I know for sure from our interview with him, and I hope you guys will tune in for that coming up later on. The Ozdas ballroom scene was particularly complicated and was revised a couple of times because they wanted it to feel very natural, very organic, that interaction between Elphaba and Glinda. And so they workshopped that a lot, did some stuff and scrapped it, changed things on site. Like these performers were put through their paces. They did not, this was not an easy shoot, and they just nailed it. It is just almost a perfect film. And when you see Rotten Tomatoes scores like in the 90s for, a brand new movie, that hasn't happened in a long time for a musical.
It's very true. It's very true. And I really predict that this movie is so good. As Oz purists, I think when we first saw, and loyalists, when Wicked first opened on Broadway, I remember being so dazzled by it and thinking like, oh, they're bringing kids to this. Some kids who maybe never saw The Wizard of Oz, and they're going to now watch The Wizard of Oz and think like, oh, the Wicked Witch of the West, she's actually not really mean. Her name is Elphaba, and she's really nice, and this isn't telling the real story. And I remember feeling really bummed about that. Like I wanted to have some control over like, no, this isn't the real, Wicked is the revisionist version. It's really The Wizard of Oz. Like, so don't look at it that way. But now I love this movie so much. I love this movie even more than The Wizard of Oz. It's my new favorite movie of all time. And I think that I'm totally okay with this eclipsing The Wizard of Oz in the sense that I think in generations from now, people will now come to Oz not through The Wizard of Oz and the Judy Garland film so much, but through this film. And that it might lead them then to look back at that film, which will look old to them, but still have that amazing score and still be another favorite movie. And but I think that the generations are going to be very different, Tori, than our generation and then previous generations whose entry was always through the MGM film.
I agree with that. I think a lot of young people are going to find Oz through Wicked and are going to find the books and the 1939 film. And, I talk about this a lot on my TikTok about how the mission really of all Oz historians is to take Oz to the next generation, hand it over. I'd love to see it live another 124 years, please. So yes, this will definitely assist in that legacy. And, I was saying this morning, you look at the Oz canon, the catalog of films that we have about the Land of Oz, there are only a few that people hold up as the greats. And I think this will join the ranks as one of the greats.
Oh, absolutely. And I hope it does really well for award season because it deserves it across the board. I mean, certainly John M. Chu and Best Picture, but every performance is fantastic. And then all of the, design categories, like if they don't get, I mean, they can't do Best Original Song, but they could certainly do Original Score. But, for effects, scenic design, production design, editing, costume, hair and makeup. Yeah, it's all so next level and elevated and interesting. I mean, to see things that are familiar, we know these characters now, the Wicked Witch of the West for how long and Glinda the Good, but to have it reinvented and in a way that reinvigorates audiences is really what's special. So I just love seeing all the merchandise out there, all the other things that are coming together that, you know, we're experiencing an Ozassance for a great time in our lives.
100%. And I have heard some rumblings in the Facebook groups that some people are experiencing wicked fatigue. Kids, buckle up. We still got another year to go.
Yeah.
You know, people who are not as invested in new adaptations, and there are some people who, when they look at the canon of Oz, are like, it's done. Don't touch it. It's perfect. We don't need Wicked. I couldn't disagree with that more. Turning a story over and looking at it from different angles and perspectives, I think is the thing that carries it forward. And I would urge everyone to reject that kind of thinking. And also, we haven't had a merch landing like this for Oz since 1989. So yeah, I'm on board. Let's bring it in.
Seriously. Well, we'll have to do this again soon, because I'm sure we're going to have more thoughts about this movie, but also before long, it's time for us to start making predictions for part 2. I already have some. To you?
Me too. Okay. I really do feel like part 2 is where they're going to be able to add a lot of new. Part 1, you know, the shiz story in the musical is very full and very descriptive. Part 2, I mean, I would say Act 2 of the musical is narratively not as strong as Act 1. And I think they have a lot of room here for additions. I think we're going to get a lot more of Nessarose than we get in the musical, which I'm really excited for. Marissa Bodie's performance was delightful, and I loved her interactions with Cynthia Erivo's Elphaba. That sisterhood and that dynamic is very interesting. And of course, we see the governor of Munchkinland die in part 1. And
I know. You know, that's like, we normally don't hear about that until Act 2, and here they actually shared it. I remember being so excited. It's the very end of the film, and you see it in the background, and like, it'll obviously get explained in part 2, and then what happens in that household and that part of the country. But yeah, that was kind of cool to give us that little moment.
And I think we're going to get more of Elphaba the anarchist than we get in the musical. We know she's advocating for animal rights. We hear that from Nessarose, but we don't get to see it. It happens off stage. I think we're going to see more of it demonstrated, and I'm really excited about that, and especially with a performer as strong as Cynthia Erivo. Bring it on. I cannot wait. And we have less than a year. The year
I know.
Today. So yes.
I know. It's very exciting. Tori, this is great. I have a bunch of predictions too, how some storylines that I think that are going to be expanded, and also because Act 2 on stage is shorter than Act 1. So if they want to allow for this kind of runtime, 2.5 hours again, there's going to be a lot more added to part 2 than part 1. It might not be. It might be a shorter film, or it might be a longer film. But I think we're going to see a lot more depicted on screen that we did not see on stage of the actual Fab Five: Dorothy, Toto, Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion, as we know.
Toto.
Yes, I always include Toto. You must. And then some other developments really thought out and explained. But I will save that for our next Oz talk to get more specific about that. But this was so fun. Let us know in the comments. Please like, share, follow us, subscribe on all of our social media, and let us know your thoughts if you've seen the film, what you think of it, or when you're going to go see the film. And we look forward to hearing from all of you. Love you, Tori.
Love you, Ryan.